Huge work mistake. Forgot an airline crew in a McDonald's in Portugal for 5 days. What's your biggest work-related mistake? Right after 9/11 happened, I had to go from Chicago to our New York City data center. We're a stock exchange broker, and this data center was 2 blocks from ground zero. There was talk that Nasdaq wouldn't be up and we would have to take over orders for them interim. While we had 6,000 servers in Chicago, we really needed to get our 4,500 in NYC up too. So we're hustling and taking shortcuts when we could to try to get things up and running. Cooling tower drained, cleaned, refilled. A big but semi-trailer sized generator dropped off. Begin to fire everything up. We're looking good. Now it's time to start the backup system power smoothing and switch from mains to it. Now this power smoothing system was an ancient beast we inherited from the previous owners, which was a big iron mainframe setup from the 60s. Now it smoothed power by using a flywheel. I don't know how it all worked, and it had never needed to be restarted before, so this was all new to me, a young 24-year-old sysadmin. The flywheel was a 10-foot high solid concrete wheel that weighed 4 tons. It spun at 5,000 RPMs. To start it, you took off an access door, applied power to the system, and gave it a little nudge. There was an arrow in chalk pointing one way, so I nudged it in that direction and it began spinning up. After 2 hours, when it was fully up to speed, you took a timing light and shined it at it to make sure it was going the right way. Yes, the system could run in either direction. So, all looks well. So I grab this huge lever that looks like it's right out of a Shelley novel and slowly push it from bypass to active. As soon as the lever went past the T in active, we heard a dozen large booms, and then a bunch of smaller booms. Complete darkness. Apparently at some point in time the wheel needed maintenance, and when they were done, they put it on backwards. So the arrow was pointing in the wrong direction. So instead of positive voltage, I was sending thousands of volts of negative voltage to all of the PDUs in the battery racks. As you could imagine, they don't expect that kind of thing. The big booms were the $50,000 power distribution units exploding. The smaller ones were all of the control circuitry for the UPS. And that's not even the worst bit. So all these booms happen. Then it's dead quiet. We managed to destroy this semi-trailer sized rental generator. But remember how I said it was a 4-ton flywheel? And it took 2 hours to come up to speed? It took roughly that long for it to spin down, as well. And I didn't flip the lever back to bypass. So this system is still pumping voltage. 6 fires later, it cost the company close to $2.5 million to get the system working again. And it took over 3 weeks of around-the-clock work. We're talking replacing everything. The PDUs, the switching system, even the wires down to the street. Didn't get fired though. Dang, I miss that place. That's not really your fault though. That's the fault of the maintenance guys who put the flywheel on backward. Now, not switching back to bypass. Maybe, but I could understand the oh crap, I just killed everything reaction, making you reticent to touch ancient looking equipment. Throw away. For obvious reasons. I was working on one of those TV shows where you do stupid things in public and film people's reactions. In the skit we were doing, a man would be jogging with a stroller containing a lifelike baby doll, and I was going to hit him with a car. The jogger was wearing bright green. They dress funny on these shows so that you don't mix up the cast with pedestrians. So I'm cruising up to the stop sign in a beat up old Ford. My adrenaline is really pumping. This was my first time actually being involved in a skit. I see the bright green jumpsuit, and I gun it. I hit the wrong guy. It was just some dude jogging with his kid. I realized what happened when the guy I hit didn't jump onto the hood the way you're supposed to in these stunts. I honestly don't remember anything about the incident after that. I was in shock. The dad had a few broken bones. The baby was fine. Needless to say, there was a huge settlement paid out. I'm currently pursuing an unrelated career. Moral of the story: dress as normal as possible while in public. My dad always tells of a story when he, an electrician, plugged in some wires backwards and blew up a $10,000 piece of equipment. His boss was really cool though and told him, just consider this a $10,000 investment in your education. When I was a kid I used to work at Hess. It was one of those one-man stations where the attendant sits in a little booth in the center of the pumps. This was before the days where you could pay at the pump. You would go to the booth, give your credit card to the cashier, through the little S under the plexiglass, and he would open your pump. One day, one of the pumps jammed, and I had to go out to fix it. As the station was very busy, I hurried out to the pump, and only after I heard the click of the door closing behind me did I realize I had locked myself out of the booth. Needless to say, the variety of people who were trying to get gas and now couldn't were quite upset. Not quite as upset as the people who had their credit cards locked inside the booth, though. I ended up having to call my manager at home from a payphone to bring another key to let me back in. I was left dealing with irate customers for the hour it took him to arrive, and turn away other irate potential customers who I had to turn away, one whom was completely out of gas and stuck there. My manager had a chuckle when he arrived, and I late learned that this eventually happened to everyone, and that you could use the stick used to measure the gas levels in the tank to push through the tiny slot in the front through the booth to unlock the door. Give your credit card to the cashier through the little S under the plexiglass. Best payment method ever. Used equals rather than equals in a bulk email sent to clients' business partners. First recipient got 900 emails, second 899, third 898, so on and so forth. You have ma bang. I accidentally knocked over 2 aisles filled with wine glasses. Lucky for me, everyone was too busy freaking the frick out. There was apparently a customer nearby who also got a few cuts on his legs that they didn't notice me slowly slipping away and reappearing a few seconds later to ask what happened. No one ever suspected it was me, but I still felt horrible because it was over a few $1,000s worth of stuff that I broke, which may not sound like much, but when you're 15 years old working on $11 HR, 5 hours a week. I thought you said they didn't notice me slowly sipping away like you were standing there with a glass of wine watching. I left a huge legal folder for a multi-billion, with a B, lawsuit on the subway. Some homeless guy finds it, calls the opposing attorney and ransoms the dang thing. Luckily there was nothing in the file that wasn't secret or not public record. Needless to say I was fired. Counter intel. Start leaving fake legal folders where bums can find them. Accidentally sent out the salaries of every one of our executives and the owner to about 100 people in the company. The TLDR is that I requested info from HR, just a list of eligible employees for something, and what they sent had the default sheet 1/sheet 2/sheet 3 tabs at the bottom of the workbook. Sheet 1 was the list I had requested. Sheet 2 was for some reason executive compensation. It sucked. Please disregard earlier message. Those numbers were not salaries, they were just scores in our fantasy football league. Accidentally uploaded the email templates to the wrong website. The email template I uploaded was from an organic farm company with a message like, if we don't get back to you soon, we're probably knee deep in mud. The company I uploaded it to? Yup, funeral directors. Killed all power to a stage in a venue with 1,200 people raving hard. Longest 30 seconds ever while I switched the broken cable out. I used to be a product merchandiser for Coca-Cola a few years ago. Basically what I did was go to grocery stores, meet the driver dropping the delivery and stock the shelves as fast as possible and get to the next store. Repeat. My second day on the job I was stocking 2L bottles at this mega grocery store, running a bit behind because the order came in late so I was moving fast. Dropped a bottle of Sprite on the floor, and it hit cap down. That little bastard shot up in the air and cleared 4 aisles. Luckily it didn't hit anyone. On my last day of working for Coke same thing happened, except this time it went flying straight for the cash and nearly hit some lady in the head. As I headed to the back room to get a mop, every employee was lined up applauding. One of them offered to clean it up as it was the funniest thing he'd seen working at the store, and that was the last bottle I stocked working for Coca-Cola. Accidentally deleted the email accounts for my entire organization. Stopped the command once I realized what happened, but by that time it had wiped out 3/4s of the mailboxes, including both of the owner's accounts. That was a dark day. I'll always be careful with RMRF from now on though. I had a project to refurbish the sump in a hydrochloric acid containment structure in a refinery. Basically, the HCl tank had a wall around it so that if the tank leaked, the HCl would be contained. Inside the wall was a sump full of water, used to scrub out the fumes when the tank was filled. Never mind, this sump was full of very acidic water, and even after pumping it out and flushing it several times, the pH was 0. Yes, 0. Well, we couldn't use the special epoxy to repair the cracked concrete until the pH was like 2 or something, so I suggested that we put some Neo into the next flush to try to bring the pH up enough. The manager in charge said, "Good idea, just fill it with straight caustic," the industry term for Neo. That wasn't my intention, but I went along, and when we came back the next day, the sump was gone. The Neo had just eaten the HCl soaked concrete in a frenzy of reactive chemistry. Now, for those of you who remember your high school chemistry, HCl plus Neo, NaCl plus H2O. For those who don't, I had made a puddle of salt water where there had been acid soaked ground before. Pretty innocuous, but that's not how the EPA sees things. It was a spill to ground of more than 1 barrel of Neo and thus a reportable incident. Oh, and the sump was dissolved. My boss was very cool about it and we built a new sump and put it in the big hole I had created. And excellent Alice. Whoa, that's both hilarious and scary. Okay, I've come out of the depths of Lurkerdom to post this. Here goes. I used to work for a TV company that makes a lot of high profile shows, including one of the most popular shows on British TV, which is also broadcast around the world. Our client had gone out on location and shot all their footage for an episode of this show and brought it back to my work, only for me to then lose their tapes. The show goes out on a Wednesday night, and it got to the Sunday beforehand and we still couldn't locate 5 of their tapes of footage, because I had put them somewhere, and not in the location I logged them into on our system. Everybody chipped in to help look for these tapes, staying behind and pulling 16-hour shifts to search for them, but when push came to shove, we couldn't find them and my company had to pay for the client to reshoot their footage. Not the end of the world, right? Wrong. It turns out that the footage on the tapes I had misplaced had been shot from a goddamn helicopter. So my company had to fork out £18,000 for the camera rentals, the crew and the hire for a dang chopper. And then real kicker is that as soon as they had shot it again, the original tapes turned up. FML. TL. DR. I messed up bad and cost my company £18,000. Probably won't be seen by now, but when I was an MSN Tier 2 infrastructure engineer, I deleted all the MX records for the hotmail.com domain, effectively cutting off inbound mail for all of Hotmail. It was down for about 5 hours. I hope this doesn't get buried, because this is a good one. I am a chemist, and over the period of about a year I was doing a series of very dangerous reactions. Essentially I had to mix a strong acid with an alcohol solvent and several other chemicals, seal the chemicals in a strong glass bottle, high pressure reactor, seal the bottle, and submerge the reaction vessel in 175°C silicone oil. If any of you have heated up a closed container, you know this builds internal pressure inside the container. I kept a valve on top of the reactor to monitor the pressure. The container was rated to be safe at pressures up to 150 C. Unfortunately for me, one particular day I started warming up the reaction, and the heat was applied to the solution just fast enough in just the right way to start a runaway polymerization reaction. If you're a chemist, you just cringed. This runaway polymerization reaction gave off massive amounts of heat very quickly, thus shooting the pressure of this flask from 130 C to holy heck run for your life. The resulting explosion was so loud it sounded like an 18-wheeler slammed into the side of the building. Luckily for me, and my lab associate, no one was in the room when the explosion went off. Hot shards of glass were shotgunned across the entire room, as well as a nice spray of hot silicone oil. Even worse, this explosion happened right next to the CEO's office. He ran out looking for me, to which I assured him we totally have everything under control. Oh god, please don't walk in there and notice I ruined your $100,000 lab. Luckily the damage to the facilities was minimal. No one was damaged, and I got to keep my job. TLDR. Caused a massive explosion at work right next to the CEO's office. If I were the CEO of a chemical company, I would definitely not take the office right next to the lab. I used to work on a website that sold very seasonal products. The Friday evening before Halloween, one of the busiest trading times for the site. I was checking things were all okay over SSH. Everything seemed fine, so I decided to leave my computer. Typed sudo halt into my terminal without thinking and went and got dinner. Turned out I was still logged into the server and had turned that off instead of my machine. The site was down all weekend, missing out of thousands of pounds of trading. I no longer work on that site. TLDR. I remotely turned off a web server and got fired. Not my mistake, but I think our CEO wins this thread. I used to work for a telecom company and our CEO went to a site to look at our new fiber optic shelter. While going around the shelter, he accidentally stepped on fiber that was transmitting more than quarter of the data of our country. All our country had outbound connection problem for 18 hours. It affected more than 10 million people. Oh god. Here goes. Working at McDonald's 3 years ago. Little kid spills Coke on the floor. I happily wander over to clean it up. Never was bitter about my job. It's my job. It pays and I chose it. With a mop. Mop that crap up lightning fast with a smile and everybody is happy. Go behind the counter and retrieve the slippery when wet sign to place over the newly cleaned area. And when I get there, distracted by something, I slip. My foot slips out like a javelin and kicks a baby's high chair. The baby's head whiplashes against his table so hard both of his shoes fall right off. I just stared in horror at the family. I place the sign down like an idiot and run back behind the kitchen for my dear life. Then I proceeded to crack up in the most maniacal nervous laughter accented with breaths of horror. What had I done? I worked as a cameraman in high school. One night I was working alone at our town hall filming a committee meeting and my boss gave me the keys. I was told to break down and lock up after the shoot. I forgot to lock the town hall. My freaking town hall was wide open for a whole weekend. I realized this after I returned the keys. So for the whole weekend I was freaking out, thinking everything would be stolen and they would trace this mistake back to me. Nothing was stolen and everything was fine. I've never actually told anyone this before. That sucks. Kyle Gibson. Hope no one finds out. I once worked for a music PR company. My first job was to send a promotional email out to about 1,000 journalists. I forgot to BCC every and instead just CC'd them. 90% of the mailing list unsubscribed. As you can imagine, that 1,000 journos was the PR company's bread and butter. This isn't too bad, but I messed up the logos that were supposed to go on the bottom of a bunch of signs I'd made. I put our organization's logo on the sign, but not the logo of another org working on the project with us. So the solution we figured out was for me to just slice the bottoms off of every sign. No logos. Nobody feels slighted. I still remember the sinking feeling of realizing I was going to be stuck at work till midnight, cutting off the bottoms of 600 signs with a rusty paper cutter, until I realized I could call the printer back and ask him to take the signs back and cut them off himself. He saved my butt. I sent him chocolate. Good job with the follow-up chocolate. I posted this once before, but I was in the middle of a remote assistance session with a user who was having trouble with his Outlook. I resolved his issue and proceeded to send a test email to myself along the lines of test this is a test. I was doing a million other things at once, so I wasn't paying attention to the screen or keyboard, and when I looked at the screen, my heart sank. TT, this is a T. Luckily the user I was on the phone with was a good sport and thought it was hilarious. I was pretty mortified. I configured a server, moved it on site at a client, installed and configured apps, all without realizing it was RAID 0 instead of RAID 5. Mission critical data on this box. 1 year later, while on site for a different reason, my boss realized what I did. I spent the night there backing up, recreating the array, and restoring. Explanation. RAID 0 means when one hard disk fails you lose everything on all hard disks. RAID 5 means when you lose one hard disk you can replace it without any loss. The latter is typical for corporate servers and reliable computers. The former only for temporary data for speed freaks. I worked in a warehouse once unloading trucks of mostly food and sometimes cigarettes. I was unloading a few pallets of cigarettes and accidentally hit the gas instead of the brake. I reamed the boxes. I thought I was fired for sure as reaming a boxes of cigarettes costs quite a bit. $50 a carton / 30 cartons a box. Turned out I missed the Marlboros and hit some mini cigars that were packed on top. Things are like $5 a carton. Boss was happy he didn't have to fire me for it, so it worked out. Another time I ran the thing into a shelf, which knocked it over and then knocked over the one next to it like dominoes. I didn't have a driver's license at the time, so I'm not really sure why they kept having me drive that forklift. Now I'm behind a computer screen away from heavy machinery. I'm sure everyone is safer for it. Good. Now, let go of the mouse and back away slowly from the computer. I work for a lighting manufacturing company. We sold a huge amount of light fixtures to UPS that they were using in their warehouse facilities. Imagine a huge order with skids and skids of shrink-wrapped fixtures. Everything was going great. Even was asked to step up the delivery date to meet a deadline. Told them sure, no problem. Fixtures make it to the job site, except they arrive in FedEx trucks. I did not live that one down for a long time. I broke a champagne flute at a wedding once. It was one of the bride and groom's matched set. I was picking up cake plates and saw the glass on the edge of the table. Told myself be really careful, that's at a bad spot, and then proceeded to tap it just enough to knock it off the table to the ground. Shattered. The glasses were crystal and a family heirloom passed down through their Jewish family from before the Holocaust. I have never felt more guilty or terrible in my life. I still think about it sometimes and want to curl up in a ball and die. TLDR. There's nothing quite so anticlimactic as being destroyed by a clumsy waiter after surviving the Holocaust. Forgot a semicolon in a 25k line firewall infrastructure configuration file that I was cleaning up over several months because the people before me were such lazy fricks. Took about 3 months for it to have an impact. When it did, it took out a major investment bank overnight. I fixed it half an hour before trading opened and they would start losing bajillions. To be fair, it wasn't entirely my fault. I'd inherited awful horrible management tools that hadn't been updated in years. Huge amounts of undocumented craft and kludges, and obsolete hardware. I was the only guy out of a team of 4 who bothered to pick up his phone when everything broke that night. The on-call guy, his deputy, and the manager were all missing, and came in at 2,300, drunk off my butt, to a room full of nail-chewing managers wanting me to do something, do anything, fix IT now. I could barely see the monitor, let alone type. A colleague came in, looked around, ran out, returned with a cup full of cigarettes and an ashtray, and some black coffee, muttered something like "I think you're going to need this," and fled. It was almost as bad as the time I put in an 84-hour straight day, but that's another story. Or the episode with the baseball bat, or the garden hose and the overheating server room exhaust, or the contractors racing trolleys full of new top-end laptops down loading ramps straight into the sprinkler system, or the top traders with bucket loads of child pee. I made a lot of money at that job. I would never do it again. Never ever ever never ever never 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 ever. This is like something straight out of the Net Slaves book. I was officiating a soccer game of 15-year-old boys. The team's respective colors were red and white. There was one African American boy on the red team. As the game progressed, it got more dangerous and out of hand. At halftime, I informed both benches that I would be calling the game tight, and that the next flagrant foul would not go unpunished. 30 seconds into the second half, the African American boy had a hard foul. I blew my whistle very aggressively and yelled, "Take a rest, black." After realizing what I had said, I immediately tried to correct myself. I stumbled over every word. The damage was already done. One player on the other team said to me, "Not cool, dude." Military guy here. Fired artillery rounds 14 kilometers off target in Afghanistan. No one was injured and the issue was more systemic than my fault, so no one got in trouble after it was all said and done. The rounds were elimination, so the chance for injury was pretty minimal. The scary part is that no one except me noticed the mistake. Close enough for government work. Not my mistake, but someone I knew. I work with aircraft mechanics and a jet we worked on was launched out by a crew chief. They are pretty much in charge of all the maintenance that goes on. Well, he neglected to do his walk around. as did the crew too apparently, and didn't close a sliding access door on the underbelly of the aircraft. Jet took off and wouldn't you know, it wouldn't pressurize. Funny thing is, there's a light that tells you this door is open on the flight engineer's annunciation panel. A dummy panel that tells the crew something is wrong by illuminating a light that's normally off. But no one caught it. This was the last straw for this guy as he's no longer on the line taking care of jets. It should be noted this guy wasn't a newbie either. I always wanted to have a budget. During the crazy days during the early internet crash, I worked at a high-end consulting firm doing high-priced website building and analysis, million-dollar contracts with blue-chip firms, etc. My job was to write software to analyze website log files. Anyway, one of the clients we had built a website for was seeing super high, 75+% revisit rates, people who come to the website twice, and we had been reporting this to them for some 6 months or so. Suddenly, one day the revisit rate dropped to some small amount and we can't figure out why. We find a correction in the timing for one of the log files and proceed for another 6 months or so. I don't remember the exact time. So then, suddenly, the revisit rate drops again. My boss has an analyst investigate. To my shame, I dismiss the whole thing as a waste of time. I mean, we can just correct the timing on a log file and be good, right? Turns out the problem was that my analysis software did not handle daylight saving time correctly. This wouldn't be a problem except that there were 3 source servers and 2 used daylight savings and 1 didn't, so twice a year. The files were getting out of sync. The big problem was that we were correcting it in the wrong direction. The revisit rate that our entire senior staff had been so proud of as the highest in the industry was BS, and we had been reporting it for around a year to the client who was paying us big money to do so. So we started to think of a communication strategy. The next day, our company puts out its quarterly report and superimposed on a page, the full height of the page, is the incorrect revisit rate. I go to my cube and start packing my crap up. These are the kind of things lawsuits happen over, and I figure it was only a matter of time before someone is going to be fired over this. But then the next day, the client company goes out of business. Woohoo. Problem solved. It was an extremely hot day and I was playing for a festival crowd of thousands. These festivaltants warm up quite fast and I dehydrated like crazy under these hot lamps. It wasn't the ordinary festival, when suddenly I decided to grab a microphone and tell the crowd I was thirsty. I've never seen this much liquid, mostly beer, flying through the air towards me. When I finished the set and one of the stage hands lifted up one of the CDJs, there was about 3 liters of beer running out of it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.